Opening shot, more Americans use social media as a primary source of news and information than ever before, and that presents some significant challenges. First, we know the algorithms are designed to keep people hooked in information silos and designed to elicit a bare emotional response like fear or anger. Which brings me to the fast-moving events of this weekend. Protests in Broadview, unrest in Brighton Park, where federal agents shot a woman after she allegedly rammed into them and threatened them with her vehicle. Two things we know to be true about social media: it can get you information as it's happening, but it oftentimes gets it wrong. Many times, government accounts themselves are the worst offenders. On Saturday, DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin posted this message that ICE agents were rammed and boxed in by 10 vehicles in Broadview, the same place as the detention facility. Except nothing of the sort happened in Broadview. That alleged incident happened in the southwest side neighborhood of Brighton Park. The post was never taken down, and it was spread by reporters and influencers alike and has been seen by multiple millions of people. And then this viral post claiming the video showed the alleged ramming incident that led to federal officers shooting and wounding Miramar Martinez. Except this is not video of that altercation. This is an altercation that happened later. And then a viral post that claimed to be a picture of federal agents zip-tying a toddler outside Tuesday's wild raid involving Black Hawk helicopters on an apartment building in South Shore. Turns out it was a completely unrelated Instagram post or TikTok of a father pretending to zip-tie their child as a playful joke. These are just a few of the daily examples where social media has proven itself an unreliable source for accurate information. Not only does the public consume it and take it as real, we now have government officials making life or death decisions based on the breathless posting on social media, even when it bears no resemblance to what actually happened. Calls to mind the recent comments of Republican Utah Governor Spencer Cox. He said social media is a cancer and urges people to log off and touch grass. Social media sure has the dual problem of making people feel like they're more informed when in reality, it's making them less informed. Tonight, Governor Pritzker sues to block the deployment of National Guard troops to Chicago's streets. How a federal judge ruled. CPD Superintendent Larry Snelling speaks out to set the record straight on what happened this weekend with federal agents and protesters. And Mayor Johnson signs an executive order establishing, quote, ICE-free zones.
Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props.
We know what this looks like. Deploying the National Guard to Chicago sends a chilling message. It tells us that standing up to the Trump administration is something to be crushed, not heard.
These are not actions of a democracy. These are actions of a tyrant.
Strong words there. Good evening, White Sox fans. Welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Paris Schutz. Governor Pritzker and local Democratic elected officials go to court to stop President Trump's deployment of Texas and Illinois National Guard troops amid confusion over what exactly they'll be used for. And joining us to wade into all of these events over the weekend and the last several days are Joe Ferguson, president of the Civic Federation, former Chicago Inspector General and former federal prosecutor, Mark Morial, national president of the Urban League, and Chuck Hernandez, president of the Chicago GOP and former Chicago police detective. Great panel. Great to have all of you here. I'll start with you, Joe. The state argued their case in court today for a temporary restraining order on this National Guard deployment after a judge in Portland ruled right away to block the deployment there. The judge here not ruling right away. How come?
Well, there was a little bit more of a runway for the judge in Portland. This is immediate. Every case has different facts to it. There were some very specific things in Portland that drove that ruling that aren't necessarily present here. And while some may argue, and I think there would be a good case for the judge to have imposed a temporary restraining order for 48 hours while everybody briefed this, it was also sort of a demonstration in judicial cautiousness and patience to actually read all the pleadings. What was notable to me was in the hearing this afternoon, it was reported that the judge wasn't able to get answers to any of the specific questions that she was being asked by federal authorities. That in itself might have warranted entering the TRO until those answers came. But we'll see on Wednesday what happens.
Interesting point, because according to our own Joni Lum, who was in there, the government attorney for the federal government was not able to say where they'd be deployed, what they'd be used for. So a lot of confusion right now. Mark Morial, National Urban League president, welcome to Chicago. I want to bring you in here. Your reaction to what you've seen here in the city of Chicago.
So I want everyone to also know I served as mayor of New Orleans. I ran a big city from 1994 to 2002 and understood the proper use of the National Guard in response to hurricanes, floods, and other types of natural disasters. This is not an appropriate use of the National Guard. They are not trained in crime prevention. They are not prepared to do any sort of street patrols. They do not have arrest powers. This is performative politics. It's revenge politics, and it's a waste of our taxpayer dollars to mobilize the National Guard for this purpose. It's all for show. And I think people need to understand that as what we're going to argue the technical, legal, constitutional issues, which I think we should. But the threshold issue is, what should the National Guard be doing? They should be helping those who are flooded in Texas, those who are flooded in Kentucky. They should be assisting in response to the fact that we're in hurricane season and being on standby, not being used in major American cities for whatever purpose, which the judge found out in the case today is unarticulated and unstated.
And Chuck Hernandez is a former Chicago police officer. You are trained in those things, but the point Mark makes is National Guard is not. It might even be dangerous if National Guard is going to be called up to patrol, because that is not what they're trained or used to doing. So what role would there be for that?
Yeah, nobody's making that case. He's making a false claim here, the mayor, that they're coming here to do law enforcement. That's not what the National Guard is coming here for. They are coming here to protect federal assets that are under siege. We see what's been going on in Broadview. I was out there recently. We see the attacks on law enforcement, and they're precipitated by our mayor and our governor. They are encouraging people to resist, to push back, to fight back. Guess what? You can't fight back against ICE the same way you cannot fight back against the IRS. They are an established part of our government, our federal government, and we have the supremacy clause. And so the mayor can pass whatever nonsense he wants, but the federal government has authority here, and the National Guard will come in and they will maintain order.
The problem is that the president's stated reason for sending the National Guard into American cities has been about, quote, crime being rampant, violence being rampant, these places being dangerous. Basically,
and he said that again today. He said he was going to make Chicago safe. So it's a different justification.
Whose word do you take? The man who is making the choice and making the decision, or technical arguments being made by lawyers in court? We don't need to be tricked or fooled into what this is. This is a revenge against communities and cities that for some reason perhaps this president believes don't or didn't support him. So let's strip off all of the pleasantries and the niceties and confront what this really is. I've been in Chicago now for 2 nights. I've seen all the people out on the street, thousands and thousands, enjoying themselves, going to bars, going to restaurants. And I'm saying, what's the point here, right? Are you going to put the National Guard downtown? Let me tell you what's happening in Washington, D.C. The businesses in the corridor where the National Guard's been deployed, their business is down 50%. I saw the Chicago business leaders on television this afternoon saying that they don't support this because they don't think the image of military personnel, people in military gear, being in these communities is going to make people feel safe. Instead, it's going to basically send a message: don't come here because it isn't safe.
Mayor, with all due respect, you're out of touch. I was in Washington, D.C. too recently, and it was very safe to walk around. You know, part of crime is perception, and you know that. And many people are afraid to walk the streets of Chicago. We've led the nation in murders for 13 years in a row. So I know you're here for a couple nights, got to go to a couple nice restaurants, but you don't know Chicago. I do.
Can I say something?
I was a detective.
Let me tell you something.
Close to 30 years.
I know American cities.
You don't know Chicago.
And let me tell you what, I've been to Chicago multiple times. I've been on the south side. I've been on the west side. The Urban League of Chicago is my affiliate here. I've been here multiple times.
I patrol those neighborhoods and I protected
Well, it's not
those
about
people.
what you or I know.
Okay, so
That's
I know
not,
this city
it's
better
not,
than
It's
you
not
do.
about what
Can I
you or I
jump in?
know.
Can I jump
What
in?
it's about is that this is performative politics. This is an effort to punish and be punitive against American cities. It doesn't make sense. Let me tell you what a good leader would do. He'd call the mayors, he'd call the community leaders and say, I'm concerned about crime. What a Clinton did, what a Bush did, what an Obama did, and say, I want to do something to assist. What recommendations do you have? You wouldn't unilaterally send in the National Guard. This is
That
bad,
cannot
bad
happen
policy.
because
This
our
is bad
governor, Governor
policy.
Pritzker, is determined. He's delusional. He's determined that he's going to be the president of the United States. He's already looking past his third term. He thinks he's going to be in the White House.
All right, let me jump in here because there's a legal part of this, and this has been litigated over and over. It's been discussed here, Joe. The president does not have the authority to send in the National Guard over the objections of the governor, except for in these very extreme circumstances of an insurrection, rebellion, or an invasion, a foreign invasion. Is there any chance a judge would buy any of those arguments if that was the route that the federal government was going to go?
So there's one other basis, and if I could just step back a bit and kind of frame the law. The Constitution, the calling of the militia originates with Congress, not the president in the first instance. We've created a system in which the National Guard can be federalized pursuant to order of the executive branch, but it's within particular framework. One. Two is we have to recognize at some level, baseline recognition, that a number of the actors here have law enforcement responsibilities. But under the Constitution, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, public safety generally is the responsibility of the state and the localities who derive their authority from the state and state constitutions. The enforcement of federal law is the responsibility of the federal government.
Yeah, but they failed to protect ICE agents on Saturday. ICE agents were out there. They were being rammed. They were being attacked by the public. Guess what? The Chicago police got an order to stand down. I want to know who gave that order.
All right, we're going to get into that.
If I could just finish the legal framework here. And so you're right. Invasion, insurrection, rebellion, or an inability of federal authorities, with the president saying federal authorities are unable to actually enforce and execute their duties to enforce the law. Those are the three buckets. We're in the third one. There's no invasion, there's no rebellion, there's no threat of either of them. It's that. Where we draw the line on that inability to enforce federal law is really where this conversation occurs. It's very, very fact-specific. And what we have here, and this is why the back and forth between your other two esteemed guests here, is that we actually have months of rhetoric, threats, feints, dodges, provocations, and provocations actually coming from activists who lean into the space of inciting, of agents who are exceeding the actual bounds of Fourth Amendment protection and constitutional law enforcement activity. There's wrong on both sides, and there is now this long record, and one of the highlights of that long record is we have the President, the Attorney General, and the Homeland Security Secretary, pursuant to an executive order, all saying that the simple fact of having declared yourself a sanctuary city or state, which itself indicates a passivity. You're not going to enforce or assist in the enforcement of federal law, but you're not going to instruct it either. Those three senior officials have declared simply those words and that passivity as obstruction.
And a judge will have to listen to an argument like that. We have a lot more to go, but we got to get to a break right now, so we'll be right back with our panelists.